What's up, everybody? Did you ever find it hard to change your mind? Or maybe you get stuck in certain ruts, or maybe you just want to change the way you're thinking. Well, you're in luck because today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to think. This is the
Woo.
Existential Stoic Podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy? How's it going?
It's going well. Now, answer me this question, Danny. How often do you find yourself thinking?
uh, I would say constantly. I don't think I
Right?
ever stop. It's hard. It's hard to
Yeah.
stop, to turn it off, you know? It just goes and goes.
People think all the time, but
Yeah.
but many times we don't think about how we're thinking, and therein comes the whole meta. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to think.
Mm.
A couple quick tips. I got three. Danny's got three, and at the end of this, hopefully, you'll be able to think a little bit better. Now,
Nice.
in life, we oftentimes think about situations, how to improve our situations, why is life suck, all of these things. So, I mean, maybe this will reference these and we'll see. My
Maybe. We'll
first
see.
one, though, my first one for how to think is whenever I'm thinking about doing something, especially something scary, I always like to imagine the best and the worst possible scenarios. So, like, let's say there's this thing that I want to do, but I'm not doing it because I'm afraid of a bad outcome. I actually like to write down what would be like the worst case scenario for this type of thing. Like if you just if you start a business and you become totally broke, you lose everything, everybody loses all respect for you, they don't want to deal with you anymore, you're living on the street, all these terrible, terrible things. And then I also like to write down the best case scenario. Well, I mean, your dreams come true, you make all the money you
Yeah.
want, all these things. So you can kind of see like, well, chances are it'll probably fall somewhere in the middle of there. But it could be the very best, it could be the very worst. And then I like to look at, well, if the very worst happened, what would I do? And this was actually a very helpful thing
I
for me
like
a
that.
while ago because there was something where I was very, very scared of kind of like betting 100% on myself and just like going all in, self-employed, that type of thing. Because the worst case scenario was like, I could lose everything. I could live on the street. People would lose respect for me. I'd be totally dejected. And I was like,
Yeah.
how could I recover from that? And I was like, well, I would go live in a homeless shelter. I would spend my days in a library. And I was like, wait, hang on a second. If I get to spend every day in the library, that's like a win. I'm already
Yeah.
set. So like, you get to see these things. And like most of the times the fears are worse than what it would actually be.
No, I like that because I think, our biggest difficulty usually, especially in betting on ourselves in general, or just thinking clearly, is also the fear that, if it goes wrong, like it'll be way worse and impossible to recover from. But the fact of the matter is, usually you can recover from it. I mean, more often, in fact, history would suggest that we usually recover from it because people survive all kinds of things and are able to pick themselves back up. So I think that's a great one. Yeah. And I like that too, because it's like visualizing it helps you sort of prep yourself mentally for the worst, and you're ready for it when it comes. But you're also prep. I like that you also prep for the best too, because I think people don't do that a lot and are overwhelmed when they get success, when things go well, because they're expecting it not to. And then when it goes well, it's like, oh God, now what do I do? And so you're planning for that as well. You're thinking through that as well, which is really helpful. I like that. It's a good one.
Mhm.
And go. So my first one is, I think, Nietzsche said, like, convictions are prisons. So I think we need to keep learning throughout our lives. I think too often, and it's probably a result of like culture and our school system and all, but like people stop as soon as they're out of school, whatever that end mark is. But I think keep learning, because you need a healthy curiosity sort of is essential for thinking. You don't want to get stuck in like your, dogmatic thinking, rigidity, because then you're really not thinking clearly. You're just relying on the same set of things over and over again, rather than sort of developing new skills, new tools to solve problems and to think through issues and difficulties in your life.
That's a good one, because I mean, if you take a look at the world, oftentimes the most bigoted people are the people who are the least educated. So, I mean, it makes sense. So, like, if you don't want to be like them, then educate yourself, and you don't need to go to a university to get an
No.
education. You can just read books. Like I was watching this video about this guy who's a multi-billionaire, and he's like, listen, you do two things, you'll be set. One, work really hard. Two, read a ton of books. He's like, you do those two things, you'll be set in life.
Well, and what the other thing is too, that people I think forget too, when you say like, keep learning, like you don't need education, right? You don't need school or university. You just need to keep learning new things. It could be It could be reading, science fiction or fantasy books. It could be, a hobby. It doesn't matter. The point is you're just exposing yourself to new experiences. And you get to see, different types of personal interactions through stories and stuff, whatever. But it helps you think clearly, I think, and see the world differently, which is good.
And make the new connections.
Yeah. Those new neural connections are important.
Mm-hmm. So my next one is try not to impose your thoughts or biases on others.
Ooh.
And there's many reasons for this, but I mean, one of the sayings, it's a rhyme, and if it rhymes, it's got to be true, is that a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So like, when people are trying to convince you their way of thinking, we see this all the time in politics. Nobody's going to change their mind. So instead of focusing so hard on changing other people's minds about these things and these important issues, why not just work on developing your mind to maybe see other people's perspectives as well? Step in their shoes, see what that's like.
That's a really good point, though. I like that too. And that goes, I think that's what probably, it's literally what the news and politics and all that stuff does all the time. And it's such an impediment to thinking clearly and to thinking in general, because, other people have their own ideas, their own beliefs. Just trying to force somebody to think the way you think is not going to get you where you want to go. You're not.
And oftentimes it's crazy issues. It's either like you're either for gun control or you like murdering babies. And it's like, what are you talking about? I don't like either of those things,
Those are both terrible choices. Yeah, no, and that's the problem, right? It's usually extremes that you're talking about. It's usually people that are unwilling to listen to other reasons anyway. And you end up making yourself very closed off. You live in that cave forever, right? All right, I like that one too. So my next one is cultivate and exercise imagination. I think we really forget how important, and you've already mentioned this, with your first one, but how important imagination is as a tool for thinking and problem solving. And I think that's one of the difficulties. A lot of us, we get older, we stop using our imagination. We stop, thinking, pretending. We stop, using it to envision different things, new things. But it's really the tool, I think, that we use to imagine, what our life could be like, to imagine new situations, to solve problems before they happen, or to solve problems in unique and different ways. So I think cultivating that is crucial. And you can do that all different ways, whether it's, I find I think reading can be very useful for cultivating your imagination. You can, like you were suggesting, you can write down, what's the worst or the best case scenario. You can imagine yourself in somebody else's shoes and journal, or, do something along those lines and try and picture what it would be like. It's just about, trying to clearly and vividly come up with a clear, idea of what something would be like. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's a really important one. Like, I know Einstein had some quote about how imagination is super important, but I don't remember the quote right now.
He definitely did that.
Yeah. Another thing is, there's that saying that a man without vision will perish. And I know from personal experience, any times in my life where I haven't had a clear vision for where I was going in my life, a direction, my life just felt like it sucked. Like, I would get into these depressions, feel stuck, all this stuff, just because I didn't have a clear vision. And that getting that vision is just imagining what your life could be like. And so you were mentioning some ways earlier, like, I always like to ask myself, what would I do if there were no limits on money or time or skill or anything like that? Because then that really takes down a lot of the barriers that you put there in front of yourself anyways.
Yeah, thought experiments are great for it. They are so fun. And even the negative visualization we talked about before, right? And trying to imagine something bad happening 1,000 times. There's so many different ways to use it, and it's so helpful. So yeah, it's a good one.
So, is this my, okay, so my one.
Yeah, it's yours. It's up to you now.
My turn. All right. So my last one is recognize self-limiting beliefs. And this is good because most of the times we go through life and we don't even realize we have all these self-limiting beliefs.
Oh, God,
for instance, if you're not a millionaire right now or a billionaire, why not? There's a belief right there that's stopping you from it, because I guarantee there's infinite money in the world. I mean, the money printers have been going burr for a long time, and somehow it's not coming to you. So there's some type of belief that's in your way from having that. But there's also all types of other things, like maybe you don't have the relationship you want. Maybe you're not happy. Maybe all these different things. Oftentimes there's things that we believe are true that are only true because we believe they're true. Yeah. And so if you can learn to recognize them, you're not going to make them go away, but just recognize them. And then when they come up, you'd be like, oh, there you are again. I know you're just a false belief. So I see you now. And now I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get what I want. But yeah, that's a great one.
Oh, dude, it's
that's
so
like
important.
that like takes thinking out of the conscious and into the subconscious, because these are the subconscious programs that are running us all the time.
Yeah.
And then now we get to actually bring that to the conscious and work on what we actually want in life.
No, and it's like so important too, because you're right. I think like literally, every in a certain way, and I think we forget this too, every belief we have is limiting in some way. It always is, because any belief is a belief about something. You're eliminating the other possibilities, right? So it is always limiting. Some are better and some are worse. But I think the biggest one that we block ourselves with is not believing that we can do anything. When if other people are doing it, you can totally do it. Even if they're not doing it, you can do it. And I think trying to cultivate that attitude and cultivate that belief, but it's hard because, most of us, I think too, even when we're doing something we're good at, we hit points where we're like, oh, I'm a failure. I suck. I can't do this. And it's like, well, you've been doing it for years. Why can't you keep doing it? Like, because you had a bad day or a bad week. And I think you're right. It's a really good one. Like trying to get rid of those beliefs and identify them is crucial to being able to sort of think clearly and be whatever you want. That goes really nicely too in my last one, which is, embrace the challenges and change in our life, because I think these are all opportunities to grow and learn. And I think, in order to think well, we have to be really focused on adaptation and adaptation skills. We have to be able to move in the world. We have to be able to solve new problems. We have to be able to, essentially adapt to the changing world, and the world, life has changed. I mean, we talked about this before, it's one of the sort of difficulties in life is that things always changing and always moving, and we have to be able to move with it.
That's a great one, because, with things changing so quickly, they're saying now that it's not so important what you learn, but that you learn how to learn.
Yeah.
And that's
like the crucial thing.
That's the thinking skill that's going to be helpful, because, especially you go get a 4-year degree or, God forbid, an 8-year degree. And then by the time you get it, that
it's like
job
all
is
past.
completely defunct. Like you don't use it anymore. So being able to learn new stuff, that's the more important skill. And that's a great one with what you're saying there.
And like with that too, like what you just pointed out is a good one. Like, or if like technology changes and all of a sudden your job is now like better done by machines, you need to figure something out. And if you know how to learn, you'll be way more equipped to do that, and to move forward.
Yeah. Like
you embrace
for
the
instance,
challenges.
just an example to give everybody an example. Like, the smartphones, the iPhone came out in 2008. That's like 13 years ago, 14 years ago. Okay. So
it's
let's
some amount of years ago.
Before then, flip phones were all the rage. So let's say that you went and you decided you wanted to get a doctorate in flip phones, and you went to school starting in 2007. That means 2015, they're already on like the iPhone 5 or something. And you now have this amazing degree, super expensive degree on flip phones that nobody uses anymore. However, if you learn the technology, then you can apply that. Yeah.
That's a good example, though. I like that.
I know.
It's true.
Bringing it to real life. That's what we do here on this channel. So, guys, that is it for How to Think on the Existential Stoic podcast today. This was a quick fix. Guys, check out all of our episodes on the podcasting services, also on YouTube as well. I'm Randy. That's Danny. We'll catch you all later. Have a good one. Later, Danny.
Later, Randy.